Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military of a Summary channel. In this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about Ukraine, where the Russians during the previous 36 hours have carried out one of the biggest attacks since the beginning of the special military operation, using, as we discussed yesterday, at least 1,000 of drones and probably even 100 of missiles. So let's discuss everything in details. And once again, this attack started 36 hours ago, and this attack ended just this morning somewhere around at 8 a.m. of the Ukrainian time. So once again, this is the first picture that was published by pro-Ukrainian sources, and this is the attack that took place between the 14th and the 15th of April of 2026. And during this attack, according to pro-Ukrainian sources, the Russians used at least 327 air vehicles to attack the territory of Ukraine. And according to this report and according to this picture, the Russians used more than 320 drones and probably up to 4 Iskander missiles. And during the first wave attack that took place between the 14th and the 15th of April of 2026, the Russians were trying to overload the Ukrainian air defense forces, and it seems that the Russians managed to do this, because this attack ended, according to information we have, at 7 a.m. on the 15th of April of 2026, and that was the first attack. And right after this attack, the Russians began the second attack. And now let's take a look at the map of the second attack that took place through the 6th through the 15th of April of 2026, between 7 a.m. of the 16th of April and probably between 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. of the 16th of the 15th of April of 2026. As you can see, during the second wave of attack, during the second round, the Russians also used hundreds of drones and up to 24 cruise missiles of Ha-101 type. And the Russians during the second wave of attack were doing the same thing. They were trying to overload the Ukrainian air defense systems to stress air defense forces of the armed forces of Ukraine, and the most important, to force Ukrainians to use as many as possible Patriot interceptors, because according to information we have, during the 15th of April of 2026, the Ukrainians managed to destroy almost every single Ha-101 cruise missile that was moving in the direction of the city of Kiev. So, but as we discussed, the Russians used up to 24 Ha-101 missiles. For example, this article was published during the 15th of April of 2026, somewhere around at 10 p.m. And according to this article, during the day between the first and the third waves of attack, between 9 a.m. and 10 p.m. of the 15th of April of 2026, the Russians used 382 air vehicles to attack the territory of Ukraine, and the Russians used a lot of Ha-101 cruise missiles. These Ha-101 cruise missiles were launched by Russians from the area of the Caspian Sea with the strategic aviation. And the Ukrainians, according to this report, according to this picture that was published by pro-Ukrainian sources, managed to destroy once again almost everything. But the most important problem and the main issue for the Ukrainians is that their air defense systems, air defense forces, and air defense infrastructure is not designed to repel attacks when we are talking about hypermassive attacks. We're not talking about hundreds of drones and dozens of missiles as we used to see almost every single 10 days before. We are talking about mega massive attacks when talking about thousands of drones and hundreds of missiles. The Ukrainian air defense forces are not designed to repel these attacks because everything is limited. Ukraine receives missiles and interceptors from the European countries, and it is always limited. It is always numbered. The exact number of missiles, the exact numbers of systems is redeployed to the territory of Ukraine right before another attack. So everything is calculated. But so that is why if the Russians increase the number of drones and missiles during the massive attack. When talking about the Ukrainian configuration of their air defense, everything goes probably bad. Everything goes very, very bad. So right after the end of the second wave of attack, which most likely also was repelled by the Ukrainian side, the Russians launched the third wave of attack, which most likely was unexpected. And as for the third wave of attack, we see that the Russians once again used hundreds of drones that were attacking the cities of Dnipro, Zaporizhzhia, Odessa, Kharkiv, Sumy. And the most important thing is that the Russians attacked the city of Kiev, the capital of Ukraine, with a significant number of missiles of ballistic type, of Iskander type. So lots of missiles, more than 20 Iskander missiles were recorded, and it seems that the Ukrainians haven't managed to bring down even a single Iskander missile that was launched by the Russian side. And this morning, pro-Ukrainian sources and the Minister of Defense stated that during the entire 15th of April and by the 7 a.m. of the 16th of April of 2026, the Russians used 703 air vehicles to attack the city of Ukraine. The Ukrainians managed to destroy almost every single Ha-101 missile. It was around 24 launched and 19 were destroyed. And as for Iskander missiles, the Ukrainians destroyed, according to this report, less than 33%. Probably most missiles managed to hit targets and to deal significant damage. So once again, during the 15th of April and between the 15th and the 16th of April, in total, the Russians used 703 air vehicles to attack the city of Ukraine, 703. And as of the night between the 14th and the 15th of April of 2026, the Russians used 327. So which means that in total, the Russians between the 15th and the 16th of April of 2026 used 1,030 air vehicles to attack the city of Ukraine, and lots of explosions, lots of objects and critical objects were damaged or even maybe destroyed. So, and of course, overnight we received lots of videos on this matter. For example, in this video we can see the morning in the city of Kiev. As you can see, people are moving to their jobs, but we see very heavy and very big black smoke over the city of Kiev, which means that something was destroyed. In this video, we can see probably the building or the territory that was attacked, but from another angle. It seems that a warehouse or maybe even an ammo depot was destroyed as a result of overnight attack. In this video, we can see how special forces, special services of the city of Kiev were trying to stabilize the situation. In this video, we can see the morning in the city of Kiev. Right after the sun rose, we see the Black Sea over the city, which means once again that something big was probably destroyed. And of course, overnight and this morning, several sources have already published satellite pictures with fire anomalies, and it seems that in the central part, more precisely the northwestern parts of the city of Kiev, this territory was under attack, and we have a military plant in this area, which most likely the Ukrainians used for military purposes. But the city of Kiev wasn't the only city that was attacked by Russians. The sources stated that the settlement of Bela Tserkva was attacked by the Russians. As for this area, according to information we have, the thermal power plant was damaged on the territory of the settlement. Furthermore, the Russians attacked the city of Odessa. Overnight, we received lots of updates on this matter. Here we can see the night between the 15th and the 16th of April of 2026. We can see lots of explosions on the territory of the city. The Russians were attacking with drones. Here we can see the Gerain drone that was flying over the city of Odessa, and probably already this morning. Here we can see a fire anomaly in the northern parts of the settlement, and here we can see another fire anomaly on the territory of the port of the city of Odessa. So this settlement was under very heavy fire. The next town and the next city that was attacked is the city of Dnipro. Here we have different videos published from this area. This is the night between the 15th and the 16th of April. We can see explosions on the territory of the settlement. The Russians were attacking the city with drones. Here we have lots of videos, lots of pictures of consequences of attack, and here we have fire anomalies. The Russians, according to information we have, attacked the central part of the settlement. We have updates from the territory of the settlement of Cherkasy. Here, according to information we have, the Russians also attacked the Cherkasy power plant. So, as we can see, according to different sources, the Russians overnight were attacking objects of energy infrastructure, warehouses, military objects, and so on. And of course the city of Sumy. But as of the city of Sumy, we have a very interesting detail about the situation in this area. The Russians during the previous night attacked the city of Sumy, but not just with Uran drones. The Russians began using just regular FPV drones to attack the territory of the settlement, and as you can see, the Russians were attacking the Sumy power station just with a regular FPV drone. Another important video and another important update is this one. Here we can see a drone flying over the city of Sumy, but at some moment this drone dropped some papers. So these are the papers that were dropped by this drone, and later we received details what exactly the drone was dropping. And this is the documents and papers that were dropped by a drone, and according to these, let's say, pictures, the Russians are trying to convince people that civilians of Ukraine voted for the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, just for 5-year terms. But now the Russians are trying to tell us that these people decided to stay in power forever. So as you can see, the Russians are trying to manipulate with the Ukrainians in the area of the city of Sumy. It's something like an attempt to probably force or to make as many as possible people and civilians from the city of Sumy probably to support Russians, because as we discussed during the previous days, the Russians began their major offensive operation in the city of Sumy, and of course it is a vital question for the Russians not to reduce the city of Sumy till ruins, not to make and not to create another Bakhmut or another Toretsk or another Pokrovsk. They want to save the city of Sumy, and the only way how to do this is to convince people to probably to support Russians. I'm not sure whether it's possible or not, but probably this is what the Russians are trying to do. They need to save the city, because most likely the Russians are planning to move further in the direction of the city of Dnipro, and of course the Russians understand that without civilians, without population, without another city like the city of Donetsk, it would be very difficult to carry out. As for the previous 24 hours, no changes in the Sumy direction were recorded. The only video we have published by pro-Ukrainian sources, and here we can see how Ukrainian drones were attacking Russian drones flying over the Sumy region between the positions of the armed force of the Russian Federation and positions of the armed force of Ukraine, which means that the Russians are carrying out a reconnaissance operation in this area, and the Russians are preparing themselves before the beginning of another wave of another major offensive operation with the purpose to establish complete control over the territory, to answer the biggest Sumy forest, and then to continue offensive operation in the direction of the city itself. It seems that indeed the Russians have certain plans for the city of Sumy, and the most important thing, once again, the Russians are trying not to reduce the city of Sumy till ruins, as, let's say, the city of Volchansk or the city of Pokrovsk or the city of Bakhmut. Now let's move further and let's talk about the Kharkiv direction. During the previous night, we received a report that the Russians managed to take under complete control the settlement by the name of Zemlyanki. This information was provided by pro-Russian sources. Based on this video, we haven't adjusted anything, but if this source reported on this matter, we believe that in coming days, either the Group of Forces North or the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation will confirm this information. As we discussed in the previous videos, now the Russians are concentrated and the Russians are tasked to establish complete control over the river of Volcha that goes between the city of Volchansk and the most northeastern parts of the Kharkiv region. As for the Sloviansk direction, during the previous day we received lots of updates from the area of the city of Liman. According to information we have, the Ukrainians carried out several counterattacks from the city. Now the Ukrainians are trying to counterattack with the purpose to encircle Russians who are currently located on the northern and the northeastern parts of the city of Liman, and during the previous days the Ukrainians managed to improve their positions and the Ukrainians continue advancing. So this video was published by pro-Russian sources, and in this video we can see how Russians were attacking with FPV drones the edge positions and stormtroopers of the armed forces of Ukraine that were moving right exactly through this area. And I would like to remind you that just a day ago we received an update from this territory, from this tree line, where we can see how Russians were bombing and attacking positions of the armed forces of Ukraine along this tree line. So now Ukrainians once again from the city of Liman are trying to counterattack with the purpose to force the Russians to fall back from the eastern and the northeastern parts of the city of Liman, and the Ukrainians are trying to recapture this territory. So the Ukrainians understand that most likely the days of the city of Liman are numbered, so that is why the Ukrainians are trying to make this number as big as possible. Now let's move further. As for the Kostiantynivka direction, small changes were recorded. This is the previous day. No changes were recorded, just several attacks and explosions were recorded in the most northern parts of the settlement. Now let's move further. The Brapolye direction, during the previous day additional changes on the ground were recorded, but we haven't adjusted the map because we have adjusted but very small changes. So like this, pro-Ukrainian sources published information that indeed the settlement of Grishina is about to be taken by the Russians completely. Furthermore, the sabotage and reconnaissance group of the armed forces of the Russian Federation continue advancing further in the northwestern direction, and currently the clashes are taking place for the villages of Vasilievka, Novoalexandrovka, Mirne. The Zaporizhzhia direction, during the previous day we received lots of updates. The Russians managed to take under complete control the territory between the settlement of Alexandrograd and Velika Mikhailovka. We have already discussed the situation yesterday. Pro-Russian sources confirmed the Russian progress on the ground. Then we received an update published by Neutral Mapper. So due to the fact that these territories were colored in Russian favor several months ago, and then according to pro-Ukrainian sources about their counter-offensive operation, we added contested area in this region, and now we're basically returning everything back. So the Russians control the river of Volcha from their side. As of the Russian positions on the Ukrainian side of the riverets, as of now this information is unclear. The Orikhiv direction, the Russians during the previous day attacked the city of Orikhiv with aviation. Lots of attacks, lots of explosions were recorded. The Russians continue reducing the city of Orikhiv to ruins, preparing themselves before the beginning of a major offensive operation in this area. According to Neutral Mappers, the Ukrainians continue counter-offensive operation in the western Zaporizhzhia direction, and as a result of counterattacks that were carried out by the Ukrainians several days ago, the Ukrainians managed to recapture some positions. And based on this report, we have added the infiltration area of Ukrainian forces. As for the Kherson direction, during the previous day, nothing special was recorded. So we have covered most of the updates regarding the situation in Ukraine. Now let's talk about the situation in the Middle East. And first, let's talk about the United States of America. During the previous night, we received lots of very important statements. The US official stated that Trump would welcome and be happy with an end of hostilities between Israel and Lebanon. According to information we have, these hours the negotiation process between Lebanon and Israel is taking place, and most likely during this period of time the parties will try to discuss and understand what the state of Lebanon and Israel are going to do with the southern parts of Lebanon and with Hezbollah. I would like to remind you that according to the position of the Iranian side, Lebanon must be included into the negotiation process. But currently there is a ceasefire process between the United States of America and Iran, and both sides using this peace process, this ceasefire, for their own purposes. Another important thing is that we see that the United States of America is trying to turn the hot phase of the conflict with Iran into a cold phase, when they will try to impose additional sanctions, and the most important, they will try to impose not just primary sanctions on Iran, they will try to impose secondary sanctions on Iran, which means that they will try to attack different banks and different companies all over the world who buy and purchase the Iranian oil. We have told countries that if they are buying Iranian oil or Iranian money is sitting in their banks, we're now willing to apply secondary sanctions. And most of all, and probably he was talking about China, because we know that China continues buying oil from Iran, and the United States of America are trying to stop this cooperation. Very difficult to say what the Chinese are going to do with this, but most likely something is going to happen. Another important thing is that during the previous day, there was a vote in the Senate, and according to information we have, the parties, the Democrats, were trying to stop supplying the Israeli military with bombs. But according to information we have, 36 out of 47 Democratic senators voted against supplying the Israeli military with bombs, but the entire law was rejected. So this is a very important situation, because we need to understand that this is something like the beginning of preparations from the Democratic Party to the midterm elections that are going to take place in autumn. So with this, the Democratic Party was trying to probably show the voters in the United States of America that there are people in their party who doesn't support the situation in the Middle East. And obviously with this situation, they managed to get some votes on their side. So as we understand, the midterms elections on the territory of the United States of America, which is going to take place during the autumn of 2026, are going to be very, very hot, because this election campaign will determine a lot. And the most important, this campaign will determine whether the current president of the United States of America, will save his power or not. Now let's move to the Middle East. We have already discussed the situation about talks between Israel and Lebanon. Let's continue this. Our forces continue to strike Hezbollah. We are about to overwhelm Bin Jbeil. So as we can see, the Israelis are going to continue offensive operation in the southern parts of Lebanon, and the main task of the Israeli forces is to create a buffer zone along the Litani River. And during the previous 24 hours, additional changes on the ground were recorded. So this is, for example, the situation by the end of the 12th of April of 2026, and it seems that the 12th of April was something like a turning point in the battle for the border between Lebanon and Israel. So, and these are the changes. The Israelis managed to encircle first the settlement of Bin Jbeil, and then they began probably the securing operation. And by the end of the 15th of April of 2026, we start receiving reports that the settlement was taken under complete control. And today, by the morning of the 16th of April, several sources confirmed this information. Based on different reports, we have adjusted the map. So as we can see, the first stage of the buffer zone operation from the Israel start is about to be finished. The Israeli Defense Forces managed to take under complete control a lot of territories where they're planning to create a buffer zone. But the problem is that most likely it would be very difficult for these forces to move further, because there are a lot of settlements, positions, probably some strongholds and trenches of the Hezbollah forces behind the Israeli Defense Forces. So, for example, the settlement of Rameish, the settlement of Koat Mon, the settlement of Bustan, Stan, Shehin. So there are still a lot of settlements along the border, which means that most likely the next days the Israeli Defense Forces will concentrate their attention on these villages and towns along the border, and this will allow them to announce a ceasefire. So because from one side the Israel Defense Forces will not move further and deeper inside of the territory of Lebanon, but the current situation, current ceasefire, will allow the Israeli forces to finish the operations through the territories they have already taken under complete control. And most likely this operation will take several days, right exactly at the same time with the negotiation process between Israel and Lebanon itself. So which means that everything is, as of now, is going according to schedule. But nobody knows for sure how exactly talks will finish. Meanwhile, the United States of America continued their blockade over the Strait of Hormuz. During the previous night, we received audio. The SATCOM releases audio when blockade on ships entering and departing Iranian ports was announced. As of now, it's very difficult to say what is happening in this area. Some sources are saying that during the first 48 hours of the US blockade on ships entering and exiting Iranian ports, no vessels have made it past US forces. Other sources are saying that several ships managed to cross. For example, we had reported a Chinese oil tanker was able to pass through the Strait of Hormuz with the Iranian corridor unimpeded. The US Central Command stated that no ship passed through the Strait of Hormuz. Another important video like this one, we see that the first oil tanker has passed through the Strait of Hormuz west after the US blockade of Iranian ports. According to marine traffic, the tanker Aegis, flying the Maltese flag, is currently heading to Barsa, Iraq. So as of now, we see that the system, the blockade, is just at the beginning of its creation. Obviously, it will take time before the blockade will start working in full power, in full strength. But obviously, this blockade is going to happen. And sooner or later, and despite the words of the President of the United States of America that he is going to release it. Obviously, this is not the end of the situation on the territory of the Middle East. Now, the President of the United States of America is focused just on one thing: to keep the oil prices on the level of $90 per barrel. And this is exactly the situation as of the beginning of the 16th of April of 2026. And that's it for the short video. The Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.